Hello and welcome to today's video on how to write an academic paper part 2. So today's video is going to focus on how to write a basic essay, the nitty-gritty of formulating a paragraph, writing an introduction and a conclusion. I'm not going to talk about the academic formats today, that's going to be another video, and I'm not going to talk about referencing. It's just more about the concept of peel, which I'll get into more detail later on. Right, so tips on writing introduction, paragraph, and conclusion. First, we brainstorm the essay when we know what the question is, and the question here, what we're going to look at is, should uniforms be enforced in school and why? This is a debate essay and it's going to focus, it's going to be pros and cons, and that's going to be a lot easier for you when you create an outline because you're going to decide, you have to decide, are you pro-uniform or are you anti-uniform? And write a list down, and there could be, doesn't have to be uniforms, it could just be about boxing, it could be about fox hunting in the UK, for example. That's a well debated topic. It's a debate essay, this one, to make things easier. And what we do is we write down the list and we make a decision. Okay, so I feel like this is going to be a strong argument, so I'm going to be pro-uniform. And I write down a thesis statement. My thesis statement is, this essay argues that uniforms should be enforced, so I've decided that they should be enforced. I think it's a good thing in schools as they form, and I give reasons. They form discipline, that should be 1 point. Create a sense of identity, that's the second point. And prevent distractions, that's my third point. So you could say, for example, oh yeah, maximum I can have 3 paragraphs in this essay. This is a short essay and I have 3 paragraphs. And I would have counter arguments to this. So some people might say, in counter, to dispute this, I'd say, not necessarily, you don't need the uniforms to create discipline, or that actually doesn't mean they have a sense of identity because they have uniforms. They could say that you become part of the crowd and that's not nice, it prevents creativity. And the counter argument to preventing distractions, you could say that, I don't know, I actually, the idea doesn't come to me right now, but you get the general idea. That is how you write a paragraph. And then we're going to take a look at an already written essay of mine to see how this forms. I'm going to go into detail in, about the introduction and one single paragraph from the main body of the essay and the conclusion. You could even, for example, tip, I don't know if you actually do this, but I know loads of people do it, and I myself is guilty. I'm very guilty of this. You have homework, the tutor's actually designated a question for you, or you don't have the options of questions that you can choose from to write an essay, and there's a word count for this, especially if you're at uni or even if you're doing A-levels. You have questions and you don't like any of them, but you choose the best one out of the ones that you have. And even if you don't necessarily agree with your point, you might have a lot more evidence and referencing, and you could write a lot more about it. So you might write about something in favor of, even if you don't agree with it. It sounds incredibly hypocritical, I know, but I'm guilty. Guilty as charged. So just a tip, like if you do feel like, oh, I can't because I don't agree with it, the aim here is to write an essay, and sometimes you have to do that, unfortunately, for your homework or, something that you have to do. Obviously, if you're writing it for enjoyment or you just genuinely believe in that concept, that's a different topic entirely. Then obviously you should be writing in your own favour, but it's just an idea if anyone is wondering. Now we're going to look at the introduction, the main body, and here I talk about PEEL. I spoke about this in the last video as well. PEEL stands for point, evidence, explain, and link back to the question. Now this creates a very nice organized structure in the essay. So when you create your point, so for example, one of my point was, uniforms form discipline. So are we saying making that point and then giving evidence for that and explaining my evidence, and I would be linking back to the question saying, and that's the reason why uniforms should be enforced in schools. You're going to see this in an example in this video. Right, so this is the completed essay. The question here is, should uniforms be enforced in schools and why? And this is my introduction. We're going to take a look at it in more detail pretty soon. But here we can see that I've started off with Britain has always battled with the issue of whether children should be allowed to wear. So I've already created, a layout for it. So basing in the UK, which I know, and there I can use examples on perhaps if the UK decided not to use uniforms in a period and compare the differences and see how that went. And here is my thesis statement. So I think I have, this is one paragraph, the main body. This is the second, the third, and I have fourth. I have four paragraphs and I have a conclusion. So I think this is around, this is a very basic essay. The word count is, 1,000 words, and it's really quick, no references. This is just a basic example of an essay. So, should uniforms be enforced in schools and why? Now, this is the introduction that you saw earlier. I highlighted it so that it's quite obvious, as if it isn't obvious already. So let's take a look at it. Britain, so the question was, uniforms should be enforced in schools and why? I based it on the UK because, I'm British. Britain has always battled with the issue of whether children should be allowed to wear what they would like to school or enforce a uniform. And as you know, if anyone knows, for example, the biggest comparison that I could make is America. They don't enforce uniforms as far as I know. And the argument here is we're just looking at what Britain did. And as far as I remember my research, that they did try not having uniforms in a period, but they found it to have negative responses. So the argument holds where the uniform restricts expression of freedom, creativity, and some implied growth prevention. Because that's a valid argument, and as I had said earlier, in counteracting the thesis statement. So others argue, this here is just more of a general overview of what I would be talking about in my essay, my counter arguments and my argument. And so others argue that uniforms prevent bullying and cover the gap in differences between richer and poorer students. So that is the general idea. And then I have my thesis statement. So that'll be more easier for you. So the introducing statement, and then we introduce the argument because we say the argument holds, and then we talk about how others argue in counteracting, so that what supports my idea. Uniforms prevent bullying. So that's another point that I could talk about within the main body of my essay. So you introduce it. Maybe you could create a historical background, say, it could be about anything. It could be about computers. Computers were like first formed and yada yada yada, and then you can talk about whether or not computers actually good or bad, or technology and how it improved or it didn't improve, and then you say, well, I believe computers did improve general life, general living. So this is an example of a main body paragraph. So we've got the point here in yellow. The common argument holds that uniforms prevent freedom. So, that's one of the. I disagree. I think that uniforms are a good thing, right, in this essay. But here I'm talking about how other people who don't think that uniforms should be enforced, like we shouldn't wear uniforms to school, say that they prevent freedom of expression and creativity. Okay, so that's the point. And then we talk about how there are countries like Canada, America, and Finland that don't make. So that's the example. But I give my evidence here saying that there have been many cases, see in orange, a situation of extreme peer pressure in America high schools. So here there's evidence, and I'm explaining at the same time, talking about how it creates a negative impact on students. And then I link back to the question, see here the bolded word uniform. So we know that we're going back to the question saying uniforms should be enforced in schools because they prevent that. This is a good thing. So I've definitely used Peel in this paragraph. And finally, this is the conclusion. Now, you can use the most basic word and just say to conclude or in conclusion or the word overall. I can, show you an examples of terminology that you can use in academic papers to make it a lot easier, and it does definitely help you, especially when you first get started in academic writing. This is a very basic essay, as I said, so it's just to introduce you on how to write a paragraph and introduction conclusion in general. Now here, the conclusion is basically a repetition of the introduction. You already made your point through your thesis statement. You're reiterating, you're rewriting, you're summarizing what you've already said, and you're bringing it back. So you can take a line from each paragraph from the main body and say, this is the reason why I don't agree. So just to dissect this, you have the to conclude. So your examiner, the tutor, can say, yeah, that's a conclusion, to make it a lot easier for you. And uniforms, again in bolded, it's a point introducing statement. We're talking about how uniforms are a symbol. It could be about anything, as I said, and then you summarize it. So overall, it allows parents. So I'm giving the whole idea of, this is the reason why, you know, uniforms is easier and practical and it should be enforced. So to conclude, hopefully this video has helped you in introducing you to how to write a basic essay with introduction and paragraph and conclusion. I mean, they all are paragraphs technically, but that's about it from me. Thank you for watching.